Tim Pool, who self-admittedly is pro-choice, completely demolishes the typical pro-choice ideology. If you guys didn't know who Tim Pool is, I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm not the biggest fan. I'll just be completely frank with you. However, Tim Pool in this moment was very impressive. They go back and forth between him and Lance from the Surfs and backs him into a corner and does it in all its glory. Now, Tim Pool used to work for Vice, and he identifies as, I guess, a liberal, but has a lot of views that are counter-liberal. Like, he's kind of in a mainline conservative space. He's kind of like a Joe Rogan, but I think he's way more conservative than Joe Rogan. I think he's way more conservative than Joe Rogan. But he, that's
definitely not liberal.
That's like a shtick. That's like a shtick. Like, I'm an independent progressive.
But it's like you're actually just super conservative.
You're in those circles. But it's neither here nor there. I'm a conservative. I don't have a problem with it. Okay,
cool. Except my difference is that if the baby's at 8 months and can survive, they can take the baby out as if they would have an abortion, but not in the process.
If it's viable at 8 months, is it viable?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is viable at 8 months. Dude, there have been babies.
Okay, first of all, so is it viable 8 months?
They're viable at like 6 months.
24 weeks. Babies, I think as young as, I want to say 20 or 20 weeks.
Yeah, it's 24.
24 weeks or 20 weeks. Is that 6 months? Yeah. So that's super early in the process. And so Tim Pool's whole argument is like, hey, man, if a baby's viable, if it can rock out,
there's no point in doing it.
Let the baby live, bro.
Yeah.
It's like such a sensible position. And what he does is he exposes the far end of the spectrum of the utter dogma, like the complete blind, fundamental, cult-like view of this issue, where the pro-choicer is catching a W against, like, it's just such a bizarre encounter. Go ahead and play it.
20 weeks?
Bro, your whole position is that women have a right to kill the baby even if they end the pregnancy, and there's no logic there.
The logic is that I don't think you agree with forced birth at a point.
How?
How? At 8 months? At 8 months, Tim Pool thinks forced birth is cool and poggy.
Stop making up stupid bullshit.
But that's what this is.
Bro.
This is 100%.
Nonsense statement, because I already said I agree with you. A woman should be able to end her pregnancy whenever she wants. A woman could end her pregnancy whenever she wants. Say it. Tim Pool said a woman can end her pregnancy whenever she wants.
Yeah, I demand you see it.
Look at yo, when he gets flustered, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Because he'll get really angry.
He's like, you're not going to play me on my show.
Yeah.
Make up something fake. Tim Pool agrees with forced birth is a false statement. You're lying. I have already said I believe that women have a right to terminate their pregnancy to a certain amount of time.
At 8 months before you draw the line.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you just said that. If the baby
So he's owning that he's pro-choice.
Yeah, super.
He's owning it, but it gets good.
that she shouldn't have the right to be able to terminate it.
To kill the baby.
Yes.
I said she can end the pregnancy whenever she wants.
And ending the pregnancy can be giving birth or
or a C-section that keeps the baby alive.
She has to be forced to give birth against her will in a C-section, but the baby's viable and they give it
so
off.
So how do they remove the baby?
So hold on, either way the baby comes out of her. You're saying that
so you literally want forced birth. You literally want the forced baby to give birth against her will.
So can I just interject here?
You're saying they should use the tools to rip apart the body and pull that out, whereas I'm saying they should just take the baby out.
I'm saying she should have the right to decide what happens to her body. That's it.
Okay, but so if either way the child is coming out, you're making this argument about forced birth. Either way, what is in her body is going to be outside of it. The question is it okay to shove forceps into the skull of the small person who's inside of her and then tear them apart limb by limb to get them out? Or should we say, no, that's not an acceptable way of delivering a baby. You shouldn't kill that unborn child.
This gentleman is a self-admitted conservative pro-lifer.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the most coherent in this entire conversation.
They are taking it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will come out. It just might not be crying when it comes out.
Yeah. Hey, did you know that you can watch videos like this on the Spotify app? We now are on Spotify under Ruslan Bless God Podcast. So if you're driving and you want to go back and forth between listening to the podcast and just the audio or watching the video, consider doing it now on the Spotify app as well as all podcast platforms. All right, I'll see you over there.
How is that for either way it comes out of her body? Either way the child comes out of her body. It's not as if there's one scenario where the pregnancy magically disappears and doesn't leave the body.
Let me add, forced birth is a nonsense politics statement.
But in your scenario, she's being forced to give birth against her will. Like she's
already pregnant, dude.
I know, but
we're not talking about forcing her to do anything. She's pregnant.
But then endorse that position.
I did.
Stick by it.
I know, I reject the there's no such thing as forced birth. Saying you can't kill that baby.
Let me tell you how fascinating this is.
Because she
the
has the baby inside her.
is so fervent about legalizing the killing of a baby at 9 months that I can sit here and say I think women should be able to terminate their pregnancy whenever they want, but if the baby is viable, there's no reason
she has to be forced to give it then. She has to be forced to give birth and then give the baby up, is what you're saying.
Give birth. Define.
Yes. Okay. So that is forced birth, right?
So
she
Oh my
can't
gosh.
decide to terminate it at 8 or 9 months.
Define give birth.
You just said at 8 months if the baby is viable.
I'd say 8 months. Define give birth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
You believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh no, I don't think anything's acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child
This
inside of
this whole notion of like, I personally am not okay with this, but I think people should be able to do this awful act is insane to me. And remember, this entire conversation is specifically about a viable, living baby. Not the mother's health. That's not what's being discussed here. This is not about the mother's health. This is not a DMB procedure. This is about a viable, living baby. And in this notion that like, listen, like, I don't think people should self-delete themselves, but like legally, I think it should be allowed.
That's crazy.
Like that's an incoherent logic. Is like, I can compartmentalize what I think is right or wrong because I know it's evil to do this act, but I think it should be legally justified. There's nothing else we look at under the sun where we think this sort of stuff. Hey, you want to see something kind of crazy? Over 75% of the people that watch this channel are not subscribed. Please consider subscribing and turning your bell notification on so that you don't miss anything we have going here.
Hold on.
not
What about
hers.
Watch this.
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the services in the United States.
Child
I
services.
guess
Child
DCFS
services?
would be.
Oh, it's her body though.
Yeah, it's her body.
She wants to do meth. What's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Got him.
Unbelievable. Unreal. He's like, well, this one's obvious. She's trying to kill a baby.
Yes.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her
Wait,
body.
look at his face when he says, hold on there a minute. He like closes his eyes for 2 seconds and goes, what did I just walk into? Watch.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, I see where we're going.
He's like, oops.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body. It's her body. What's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal, period.
This is the beauty of this conversation, man, is that it's such a disingenuous conversation. When you get to the logical, cohesive, consistent, not moving the goalposts, not renaming what a miscarriage is to an abortion.
Yeah.
The actual logical, linear conversation. It is insane to compartmentalize this sort of stuff. And by the way, and I think Tim is incohesive and inconsistent in its own logic to say that just viable. Why just viable?
Yeah.
Why just viable?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, and then they'll be like, well, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Why 10 fingers, 10 toes? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it's either wrong or it's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so when you see a pro-choicer demolish another pro-choicer based on how far gone they are in their ideology,
Yes.
it's crazy. Now, and here's the sad part, is people who are even like pro-choice light that are like, in the case of rape and incest,
Pro-choice light.
still would not say ban all of it except in the case of rape and incest.
Ah.
Even in the case of, I think, 10 weeks, that's too far. The first trimester, too far, which is, by the way, how the laws are in Europe are.
Yeah.
They still wouldn't say ban all of it except, and I've had these conversations with people that are pro-choice light or pro-life light.
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, well, so logically speaking, if you think this is wrong, when do you think this is wrong? Well, I would never do it, and I think after 10 weeks is wrong. Okay, cool. So are you okay with publicly saying ban all of it except in the case of rape and incest and anything beyond 10 weeks? And they won't, which shows that there's this mind warp that's happened to really make people believe this is a women's body issue, and it's not. This is a humanitarian issue in the same way slavery was a humanitarian issue, in the same way all these things are humanitarian issues. And here, and I'll be even more frank. If the less of two evils is women's autonomy to pursue their self-actualization and their dreams, or protecting unborn babies, the most vulnerable out of all of us, and I have to pick which one is the lesser of two evils, I'm going to say that protecting unborn babies is better than protecting women's self-actualization in this case. When there's so many opportunities to prevent this act, when there's so many opportunities to prevent it from ever happening, when there's so many ways that people can be responsible with their bodies, I'm going to go out and say, we're going to prioritize the most vulnerable. We're going to prioritize the people that cannot give any sort of consent. And if women suffer as a byproduct of that because they can't go and get their master's degree or play professional sport. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I know that sounds harsh, but I think if that's the corner people want to back this into, you're either right. It's fine.
Hey, this is a segment from our daily after party stream. Consider partnering with us online for as little as $5 a month to get access to these daily after party streams completely unedited. You'll also get access to our podcast as they are streamed live into the community before anyone else gets to see them, get to interact with our guests, get access to our private Discord server, and a discount code for our store for as little as $5 a month. Ultimately, that will help towards helping us continue contextualizing the gospel using media and podcast here on YouTube. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.